Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you. This is Kushalmehra. We're back to another episode of Canada on the Cārvāka podcast. And today I have with me Kirk Lubimov. Kirk is someone who I've been following for a while on social media, and he has some interesting takes on Canadian politics, on Canadian economics, and the whole immigration system over here. So, Kirk, welcome.
Good to see you.
So this is your first time on the podcast. So if you could tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your journey, what you do, and then we can get into the wonderful asylum system of Canada.
What a jump, eh? Um, yeah, it's. I guess I became involved in politics through various ways: interest, frustration, working, helping with policy and politicians. I primarily work on the intersection of venture capital, policy, and economics. So I help guide essentially investments, capital, startups towards essentially on the investor side, though, where to invest and which jurisdictions will be fruitful for what. So I kind of work into marriage of all of the intersection, so which has a lot of politics in it, has a lot of policy in it, which is absolutely crucial to essentially entrepreneurship and economic development, and of course, and by osmosis through everything else, it's became involved in other sides of the political spectrum as well.
So do you think what do you make of the overall political discourse in Canada? Like I'll share my opinion. I come from a very political society. India, the political discourse is very robust. A lot of political outfits, a lot of media houses. India is like politics is a very big thing in India. Like it's a very active part of Indian life. People are very politically aware. Voting percentages are very high in India. People tend to voluntarily go and vote. So on average, it's very high in India. What do you make of the average political discourse in your view? Because as you were just telling me that you've been in Canada now for a long time, but what do you make of political discourse in Canada in general and the average interest of the Canadian when it comes to politics?
Well, the interesting part is, Canada has obviously, like India, different levels of politics, different level of government, and the interest I find changed drastically from if it's municipal, provincial, federal, and the grasp of information changes very drastically as well. The overall voting rates in Canada are not that high. The average probably to the lower side depends on what kind of election and where it is. But I think the interest in information is what's really peculiar in Canada, because there's a lot of stuff happening in municipal levels, provincial levels that most people have no clue. But the municipal level has one of the biggest impacts on the day-to-day of Canadian lives. Yet most people are not really interested in that, not really involved in it, not really involved in the community as much as they should be, because your property taxes, the quality of your streets, your safety, and all that really comes from the integrity of your municipal government. The provincial aspect is really important as well. Obviously, much of the noise happens on the federal level recently because the policies have been so bad that they've been pouring into provincial municipal issues. And I think the federal government has been trying to get itself involved in jurisdictions that it hasn't done before. So I think the biggest problem in Canadian politics right now, there's two aspects to it. One, there is the cultist aspect of it, that no matter what happens, certain people will still vote conservative with zero essentially questioning or expectations from the party. And the same thing will happen on the left side. So people don't really change their minds. So it became this divisional cultism in Canada that essentially benefits the politicians, because once you have less and less expectations from politicians, they really don't have to perform for you. They just have to keep the divide. And I think this is kind of the sticking point Canada's at right now.
Yeah, it's very interesting for me where I study involvement in politics in general in Canada, where to me the Canadian political landscape is very influenced by America. It's like I find the Canadians discussing American issues so much that I don't understand. And even when they use analogies or they try to understand their own politics, they use American examples, which is a completely different political system compared to Canada. Like the Canadian and the Indian system is very similar. It's the Westminster model, and the American, system is very different. So it. I have never understood this reality of Canada, where I was like, why do people? Why are Canadians on average? Okay, I understand your neighbor is America. I get it, but it's not like average Nepali is using Indian analogies to understand Nepalese politics. You see what I'm saying? Even
Yeah.
is a big country in a neighborhood of small countries. China is a big country, but India is surrounded by other countries. It's like the average Sri Lankan is not looking at the Indian system and saying, having a discussion. But I see average Canadians having a discussion about their own politics using American analogies. I've never understood this. I'm like, can't we?
It's part of the, I think, identity issue, right? American politics are loud, boisterous. People love to gloat, love to say America first, blah 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 blah. Nobody's really ever said that in Canada, right? Canadians are not. We don't go out there and beat our chests, right? It just never happened. So whenever something does, it's like, oh, look, you're acting like that guy over there. No, I'm acting like a patriot, like I'm acting like I like Canada and I want the best for it. But for a long time, that was so scary for people and for Canadians that they think, oh, he's acting like that guy over there, MAGA, or what did they start calling Canadian conservative, Maple Leaf MAGAs or something like that. And it's just, it's such a cheap dig at people, but the underlying reality is, the sad part is that we just don't have such a strong identity with Canada that people are afraid to stand up for it and afraid to boast for it and afraid to really take pride in it, except a couple buzzwords such as we're not American, as some of our politicians described us, or we have free healthcare. And it's like, but no, what is the actual culture? What do you stand for? What are your values? And people are afraid to generate it in Canada because it requires a certain level of nationalism, which of course is becoming a very scary word in Canadian politics for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, I've never understood this, but now let's talk about this entire immigration-related shenanigan that's been happening in Canada. So I'm just sharing this chart that was put up by Ben Rabideau, and it's very interesting. This tweet over here, where he says another 18,000 increase in asylum claimants in Canada. Now just under 500K in total. 1.2% of the entire population of Canada is claiming asylum. One in every 83 people. Okay. Now, how can anyone who has a functioning brain, not see this and say, Houston, we have a problem?
Yeah. I've shared the chart, and there's a couple of interesting other charts on that topic. But the issue is not that it's one of the only fastest growing percentile of population, which is asylum population. The other aspect of it is the backlog of it. So right now we have just under 500,000, as is reported as of today, 500,000 asylum claimants already in Canada that's been approved. But we have almost double that is effectively in the pipeline but do not appear in the statistics. So, and if you look at the acceleration in the last couple months of asylum claims, it is absolutely insane. And a lot of them are coming in right now through the border again. If you remember, a big cohort of people came through Roxham Road a few years ago. That was essentially when Justin Trudeau tweeted to, we're essentially open to the world. And lo and behold, there was a whole economy opened up in the southern border in Quebec and in Ontario, and buses of Haitians and other people were, getting dropped off at our border, and our RCMP was carrying their bags over. This is actually increasing right now. So as Donald Trump has been very successful in removing illegals, there's a huge cohort that's been coming through the border in the same regions in Ontario and Quebec, and it's been a really blistering increasing in the last few months. So we have, at least 6,000 to 7,000 people a month coming in just through those borders. So, if you just do it a simple month, we have close to 100,000 asylum claims a year just from people walking in just through border entry points, which is huge.
So you know what the fascinating bit is? At the heart of all of this is, I'll just give you the numbers for asylum claims from India. Now, as someone who is probably the largest Indo-Canadian podcaster, I have the highest number of views of people of Indian origin inside Canada. I have literally got the highest number of views of people who are Indian, and Canadians based here listen to somebody like me. I've been yelling and screaming that there is an asylum scam happening for the last 3-4 years. It is happening for the last 3-4 years at a scale. Before that, asylum applications from India were never in the top 10, top 20. It used to be like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 2,000 in the whole
I
year.
actually posted by year the asylum claims from India by year. I posted a tweet on it before. I don't know if you can find it, but
I'll try to find it. You tweeted it out?
yeah.
Okay, let me try. Uh, it was fascinating. That I was that, like people are that stupid. Okay, I got your tweet. I got it. So it's fascinating that like you clearly are being fooled and nobody wants to talk about it. Like I've been yelling about this for 3-4 years personally. So just from India. So this is your tweet. In 2015 it was 268, 16 it's 446, 17 it's 505, 18 it's 674, 2019 it's 1189, 2020 it's 998, 2021 is 2944. This is when the scam started. I can guarantee you can actually check my work, and I keep saying the scam started in 2019-20. That's
Yeah.
when the scam was at base level.
So the numbers increased by 25 times, right? But the important thing to understand about this, those are finalized numbers, right? So that's after they've gone through 20, 30,000 per year of asylum claims from India. And then they allow 5,000 to 6,000 of them, mostly, Kalistanis that say they feel threatened at home because, they read a mean post or something from someone. Or just a pure immigration scam. So it's the resource requirement behind it is absolutely insane. Like Canada right now has some visa wait times for some visas like years, like decades, because there's so many, just such a backlog of different visa scams and claims. Like the insane part about the Indian asylum aspect of it is they were literally advertising it on social media, how to get asylum claims, those TikTok videos, but Instagram, like whole accounts around it. Not only that, but whole accounts of people telling you that they'll smuggle you to the United States from Canada too.
Yeah. I had shared it with Canadian authorities.
It's insane. Like it's not even hidden. Like you can trip over it just by, just surfing on Instagram. Like it is so wide open. It's absolutely embarrassing to the Canadian authorities, or at least should be.
The beauty of this all is there are two overlying things in this. So once again, your tweet says in 2019 the number starts becoming in the thousands, and
Mhm.
obviously like in 2025 it's just insane. Okay, in 2019 the Canadian government took a very unique decision, so I'm going to share that. And these two are directly correlated, which is what people need to understand. The Canadian government from 2019 till now has spent $148 million just in promoting come and study in Canada, just in one country, India. $148 million. This was not some Indian trying to scam Indians. Nobody in Canada wants to accept this uncomfortable truth. This was a planned strategy right from the top of the Canadian government. Somebody pumped in $148 million. $148 million. How do I know? I used to live in India at that time. And there would be these sham shows where they would, they would rent giant, swanky five-star hotel banquets. They would call these students there and they would tell them this will happen, that will happen. And it was openly told in those programs. I repeat, openly told in those programs that these are PR pathways. Not hidden, open.
Mhm.
They were specifically told you will come as a student and you will get permanent residency.
Yeah, pretty insane. Now, I have to ask yourself too, who lobbied for this $148 million? Who wanted that money spent?
I have no freaking clue who wanted it. I can tell you who passed the motion M44 in 2022,
It passed by everyone.
right?
Yeah,
Everyone,
every
everyone passed
single
it.
MP voted for it.
Every single MP
Yeah.
voted. The one pushing it was a liberal, Randeep Sarai. The shadow minister of immigration at that time was Jasraj Hallan.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying,
Mm-hmm.
just if people don't want to believe me, they can go and check these facts themselves. And the irony of it all is like Indians sitting in India. Like today, just today, I tweeted. I don't know if you saw my tweet outside the Greek embassy in Delhi. An army of people because Canada is shut right now. So the Kalistanis are working in Greece. I told my friends in Greece, being famous has its perks. So you have friends everywhere. So I called up my journalist friend in Greece and I told him, yo, this is happening. Watch out. It happened in Canada. It's going to happen in Greece. He's like, no, it can't. And I showed him the video. I was like, this is just 2 days. Look at the lineup. This is happening. I am telling you. The Greeks are not doing anything. Now imagine an Indian is warning them.
Mm-hmm.
I warned the Canadians. I told Canadian politicians off the record, I don't want to take names. It's pointless. Taking names is pointless. And it's cutting across party lines. I told the NDP people. I told the Liberal Party. I told the Conservatives. And not even a single one. Can you show me one video? One video before Pierre Poilievre suddenly has decided the temporary foreign worker program is a problem. Can you show me one video where he has opposed this? One.
I mean, he campaigned on giving foreign students PRs, right? He was even against deporting students that came here under illegal pretext, which is absolutely insane. But for some reason, conservatives are okay with it and brushing it under the table, and hopefully the fifth time is the charm to win the election here.
But tell me, listen, I have been probably one of the most vocal proponents of less immigration into Canada. I believe immigration is a privilege, it's not a right.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to the host country whether they want people in, whether they should take people in or not. That's up to Canada. And to each its own. That's fine. And when we were as Indians again. Listen, the Khalistanis attack Indians. You know, the lineup of journalists being attacked by Khalistanis who are Canadian passport holders of Indian origin is quite big.
Hmm.
And they murdered one who was a Canadian, Tara Hare. They murdered him. They tried to kill him once, they could not, but then they got to him. And it's all Balraj Dale, Rishi Nagar in Calgary. Then we had Samir Kaushal being attacked by the Khalistanis.
Hmm.
Then there are other journalists who are being attacked. They attack openly. The Canadian system does nothing. What, did you know, honestly, did you know about Khalistan a while ago, living in Canada?
Well, I've been talking about it for 3-4 years, so known about it long enough, I guess.
But why do you think the Canadian political class is so smitten by them?
I don't know if Canadian political class doesn't talk about a lot of things, especially a lot of things ethnic related, right? So because Canada doesn't know how to handle it, our politicians never really had to deal with it. Our political culture as a whole never had to deal with it, right? Remember, Canada has oceans on each side. We have, the United States, which is supposed to protect us. So we never had to deal with the effects of mass immigration until we'd done it to ourselves over the last 10 years. So, and before, essentially everyone, you can essentially guess which party is going to get in where just based on where the people live. And was always mostly white people, right? But the demographics have changed, and they changed quite rapidly, and the political world was not used to it. All of a sudden, you have places like Brampton, Surrey, Delta, where the majority of people are not white Canadians anymore, or not old stock Canadians, as we call them. They're recent immigrants that can now vote. They're now citizens because we've been giving out citizenship essentially with every cereal box. So it's changed a lot because all of a sudden you see like, oh, Indians, Kalistanis, a lot of other population only vote for their own kind, or only vote for their own people. So you cannot run. You look at the last Conservative election in Surrey, they ran an NDP, like a guy who ran for the NDP last time. This time they needed the same Kalistani guy to win the election. So, they put him as a Conservative this time. It's the political allegiance doesn't really matter on that side. It's as long as they get into power. You look at Abbotsford, like they kicked out a really long time good politician that's been part of the community for decades in favor of an ethnic guy, Kalistani guy, Kalistani connections, I think. Like a 25-year-old, 26-year-old young kid. I'm not
Oh,
sure
you're
how
talking
old.
about Sukhman Gill.
Yeah,
Is that the gentleman you're talking
yeah,
about?
yeah.
Okay.
And if you look at who helped him get campaigned, it's the person you just mentioned that was the shadow minister. It's all the other Punjab MPs that were conservative. They came to Abbotsford and rallied up the ethnic community to get a vote. Those people don't go and try to get a white guy in the middle of nowhere in Alberta or BC. They go and get their own elected, and that's what they do. So there is slowly a rise up of people that do not look like Canadians, I guess, did it for most part 20, 30 years ago. And just because mass immigration was so quick and so sudden, you know, certain communities only vote for their own community. So, and Canadians were not used to it. The big issue that I think most Canadians are not used to is that people from other countries care for where they came from. They can't just care for good reasons, bad reasons. They have a very unique culture. You know, it doesn't matter if you come from Punjab, Lebanon, you know, other parts of India, China, whatever, Thailand. You still have a very unique, identifiable culture that Canada does not have. So even for us Europeans, like, you know, the European culture is very strong. You go to a European store, you know, everyone speaks different European languages. It's quite obvious. So I think the general public that's been here for so long, is just not used to people caring for their culture, where they came from. And that is, I think, the big differences now, because frankly, this actually has been the big issue between Quebec and the rest of Canada. One of the sayings, I don't remember who said it, but one of the sayings in Canadian politics was a long time ago in Quebec, was that the rest of Canada expects Quebec to, hang their, bootstraps at the back of the barn door as they walk in. I'm probably butchering the saying, but it was essentially it, that, the Quebec culture has always been, you every time you listen to a Quebec politician or the Black Quebecois, they always talk about how different the culture is. And it's essentially the same, but the problem is those little cultures are growing everywhere across Canada in different pockets. And now they're a majority in some pockets. So this is kind of the situation we're in. The unfortunate part, foreign conflicts come in with it, right? And conflicts that have nothing to do with Canada, like the Kalistani movement, which essentially established itself because Canada has weak laws, afraid to do anything about it, don't want to be called racist, don't want to be called this or that, and they're running around freely doing whatever they want now.
See, on the bit where who they will vote for, I will slightly disagree with you. Again, why? Because I'm deeply involved with the politics of these Indian constituencies. Indians actually want white people to represent them. It's the Khalistanis who don't want it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the Kalistanis is that's why they have to get them into power if they want the local votes.
See, the problem stems from, again, it was a veteran Canadian journalist of Indian origin, Balraj Deo, a Sikh, who was brutally beaten up almost to death in 1989 by Khalistanis for opposing them. He somehow survived. Who has probably, and I've seen messages from Balraj to very senior people in Canada, including the intelligence apparatus of Canada. And Balraj sir would tell them that, listen, this candidate is doing this, don't let it happen. This place, the Khalistanis are rigging the election, don't let it happen. The irony is Balraj Deol came on my podcast 3 years ago. We did a podcast. We could have spoken in Hindi and Punjabi. No, we spoke in English. Balraj Deol came on my podcast, one Indian speaking to another Indian in English, and we narrated the whole system, how it's rigged, the entire history of rigging. And still nobody gave a damn. It's still available, that podcast. Still available on the internet. It's all there. Everybody knows about it. You go and ask any regular Indian. And the funny thing is, I have friends, again, I don't want to take their name, inside the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party. And I would tell them, have you ever gone and knocked on an Indian door, doing door knocking? He's like, yeah. I was like, so what's your experience? Who would they vote for? They're like, they always ask her, why don't you have a white guy coming here? Almost all Indians tell them the same thing. And the problem is so deep that like the mayor of Brampton is a white guy.
For now.
Patrick Brown. Yeah. I mean, the irony is his name is Brown, but so he was the most close brown white guy we could find. But even in Mississauga, the mayor is not a brown person. It's a white person. So it's not that they will not vote for them. It's just that the hacking of the Canadian system. I told you, it was systematically done. They hacked the primaries. You had no option. Your primaries got hacked. The Canadian primary got hacked. You can never get a white person because a white person just can't compete with this shit. Like it's so organized.
It is, yeah.
Sitting
it's extremely
on my
well
laptop,
organized, yeah.
Sitting on my laptop, I registered, my friend sitting in India, registered for the Liberal Party as Abu Fakr al-Fag Daddy. Sitting in India, and the Liberal Party gave him the primary membership.
Yeah.
And they still email him as Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and tell him about everything that the Liberal Party does. Listen, if you have such a non-serious system as a country, you can't blame the person who's rigging it. I think it's somewhere down the line the person needs to question what kind of non-serious people are running this country.
Yeah, yeah. It's 100%. We have to look internally for. This is actually a bigger issue for the conservatives than anyone else, because the conservatives have two issues. Is one, Canada is not a conservative country, so the liberals, so the leftism is growing. 5, 10, 20 years ago, like I said before, you would know who's going to win where, essentially plus or minus, just based on where they live. In Alberta, Calgary, outside of Calgary to rural areas, you would essentially know that you run a conservative. It doesn't matter if you put a shoe next to a conservative sign, they'll still vote for the shoe just because it's conservative. That is changing, and that is changing in two ways. One, leftism is growing. Even if you look at the last federal election, the amount of people that voted liberal in general in what used to be considered conservative provinces is growing. So the amount of how hard conservatives have to work is astronomical, and I don't think they get it. But also, if they want to win in certain ridings, they think that they have to get a Kalistani guy to get elected there, this person run there. So they're trying to match based on ethnicities or the flavor of the day, rather than stand up for proper policies, clean up the noise, and get active onto grassroots levels. And that was one of the biggest issues in the last election, which was extremely winnable. They just thought they needed to throw out good people out so they can get ethnic votes in from primarily Kalistani spots, which they did. But unfortunately, they lost it on other spots because, obviously people didn't want to vote for that kind of party. But they also weren't active in grassroots. And the lack of grassroots activity, I think, is one of the biggest issues. Even here in Alberta, we have a hard time now keeping a conservative provincial government. So to win federal places, it'll become harder and harder. And it doesn't really matter who you're going to pander to. You just got to make sure that you're active and get, first of all, clean out your system, get good advisors again. But also you need to start having a policy to stand for and operate at the ground level so people actually can see you doing stuff. Talking about actual good issues and having a spine to stand up for something. Like in the last election, the conservatives now are against mass immigration and temporary foreign workers, which is the smallest part of the foreign worker aspect. But they weren't that before the last election, which was, less than 6 months ago. So, you don't become brave afterwards when you have zero risk. You need to be a leader beforehand and really understand what's actually happening on the ground floor across Canada, and leverage that to your benefit. So I think this is a really big issue for conservatives more than anyone.
Yeah, and look at the rise of the international students. Like, holy shit!
Yeah.
These are three countries. So the green one, this is India, this is China, and this is Philippines. Now the Philippines bit is rising. China, it had flatlined and now is increasing again. But look at freaking India. Look at what happened from India. And this is that 100
those are 2-year-old stats too.
Yeah, and it's gone. Now it's come down. But
Yeah.
but what the hell? Like, they spent $148 million, got people in. Now I have reported 22, 23, 24. And as you and I are speaking, on average, 4 international students from India commit suicide in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
4
per day.
Yeah. I'm saying what I'm about to tell you, I'm saying this after verifying through multiple sources in India and Canada, both. Estimates of 4,000 Indian origin girls who have come from India are being sexually trafficked just in the GTA area. Greater Toronto area. International students,
Hmm.
4,000.
Yeah, it's insane. Awful.
Today in the morning when I did a podcast, I narrated a story. I've been told by some sources in Toronto that there is a Sikh temple, a Gurudwara in Scarborough. Near that, there are three houses owned by one gentleman that houses around 40 to 45 girls. Those girls are staying there, paying $350 a night. Sorry, not a night, a month. And the reason they are paying only $350 is for obvious reasons. I am bringing these stories out. I don't even live in Canada for 12 months. Nobody does. If I go and tell any Canadian mainstream media person, they will not cover this story. Why do you think that is the case in Canada?
My question is not why as much the media doesn't cover. I'll tell you why, and it's because we don't really have investigative journalism in Canada. Most of the investigative journalism in Canada comes from alternate media, mostly from the conservative side. We don't have a lot of, good old-fashioned investigative journalism. The question I have is why don't authorities do anything about it? There's so many obvious things going on in Canada, crime related, and you brought up this horrific example, which is so well known on the local community that it's, how does it not, you can't tell me it does not reach someone that knows someone who is a police officer or something like that. But my question is, how does nothing get investigated? Let me give you a couple examples. Over 6,000 tons of over $1 billion worth of cocaine has been stopped in Canada, mostly by Punjab drivers at just two border crossing by trucks, just by trucks. So far this year, they arrest them. Sometimes they arrest them to U.S. side. They say they don't speak English. They get, if they're in the Canadian side, who knows what happens to them? And to U.S., they actually get punishment. How does nobody investigate where does 6,000 tons of cocaine go in Canada? Think about the size of operations you need for money laundering, to move it, to cut it, to distribute it, to, through drug dealers and all. Think about the size of the operations you need. And you have 6,000 tons and nobody's looking into where it's going. Like, whether they think it just gets dropped off at the farmer's market? Like, right? Give you an example. The biggest drug lab bust in Canada's history in BC. One person arrested. So you tell me one guy did all the accounting, money laundering, distribution, cutting, the chemical work, went and got the chemicals, built the factory by himself, does all this, one guy? I mean, forget putting him in prison. I would hire him to operate a factory. Like, it must be the most efficient person on earth, right? When was the last time we've heard of a drug-related money laundering charge in Canada? I can't tell you one within the last 10 years, right? Our auto theft industry is over $1 billion a year now. First time it crossed over $1 billion was last year. Not a single money laundering charge. Is that a non-for-profit then? Did they do it for, out of their goodwill? Like, I don't really understand this. So we have so many things that are just not happening in Canada. It's absolutely astonishing. It's that is the real question: is what is actually going on? Like, who's running this? Who's running those organizations that somehow can't find anything that's going on in Canada? Yet the average person, can point you to it. Like, it's absolutely insanity. So we have maybe mass corruption. Sure, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it might be a duck, right? But we have so many things that are happening that should be so obvious. Remember, RCMP in a committee has admitted that just fentanyl drug teams, just fentanyl organized crime groups, there are 4,000 of them that just do just fentanyl. Just 4,000 just for fentanyl. So you should be arresting one at least by fluke, by tripping over them doing your basic police work in a neighborhood, at least a month, right? Even if you're not even looking for them, you should be able to just being driving into neighborhoods, seeing the houses, and knowing what's actually happening. Be like, something is going on there, right? The neighbors know, even here in Calgary, like everyone knows where the drug problems areas are. So the fact that you can't even bust some of them says massive incompetence. Hey, but we have a full SWAT teams and 40 cars right now at an ostrich farm because we have to execute some ostriches for some reason. So it's obvious that there's a very selective asset allocation to how the police work is done in Canada.
No, the most obvious explanation is maybe all of them are in it. Not the cops. The cops actually are suppressed. Maybe all of them are in it. Maybe a lot of politicians are in it. It's a very obvious explanation to this. So I'll give you an example again. Something we've been raising, the Indian community of Canada has been raising for the longest time. We keep telling them this is how it operates. The Khalistanis do the logistics. The cartels do the manufacturing. The Chinese do the Chinese Communist Party does the baseline,
They bring the precursors
supply. Then a lot of this human trafficking is also done through that. I'll give you a very interesting example. So most people did not notice this until I brought it to everyone's notice. So when you migrate into Canada, let's say if you are a permanent resident like me, you have to get a police clearance certificate. Like you have to go to the cops and share that you don't have any prior records and stuff. Do you know where a police clearance certificate was not required in the Canadian immigration system?
The student visas.
Yes. All the gangsters. Do you know one of the 4 killers involved in the Nijjar case also was a student?
Mm-hmm.
He was a student.
Yeah. I mean, we arrest them almost daily. There's some kind of bust or something. Yeah. That's got to do with a foreign student.
So it's quite obvious now. The funny thing is it's all come back on the Indians, as if the Indians were scheming sitting here. Here's the Canadian government $148 million in freaking scamming Indians. Most of them are actually victims. Yes, there are, like any system, some gangsters will leak, come through the leaks. It's not like let's say 5 million Indians have come here in the last 5 years and all 5 million of them are gangsters. We don't have that many gangsters in India. I'm sorry to burst everybody's bubble. We're not that kind of a country. We may have problems. We don't have a gangster problem. But some of them did come to Canada. Now, the Indian government has sent extradition requests for hardened criminals to Canada, right from Harper's time to now. A grand total of 0 people have been sent back by Canada.
Mm-hmm.
0.
I mean, we don't even deport criminals who are not Canadian citizens. We give them a smaller sentence, right? There's, I've posted about it, but there's tons of examples of sentences that have been reduced to under 6 months for the exact purpose of not to deport an immigrant who committed crime in Canada. It's absolutely insane. But the question really every Canadian should be asking for themselves is, why is nobody in government asking those questions? I understand everyone is essentially talking about bail reforms, all this stuff, but that's not the issue. The issue is, why don't, with all the resources that our authorities have, the Canadian, the CSIS, the RCMP, all that stuff, local police, why don't they go into those areas, into those places? Why don't they bust people and actually execute full charges? Why is it not happening? This is what we need to be asking ourselves. Not the bail reforms. Obviously, that needs to be done. Not the, hey, we have higher crime statistics now than we had 10 years ago. Someone needs to do something about it. No. Why is the police not? Why don't we have a KPI expectations from our authorities? Right? If you have $1 billion in car thefts and you're not busting half of it, what is going on? If you know you have 4,000 fentanyl drug cartels in Canada and you're not busting 200 of them every single year, how is it possible, right? If you're busting one guy that's operating a $750 million lab, it's becoming a comedy sketch at that point.
No, it's because at a fundamental level, Canada is not a serious country. So I'll give you an example, which I've found very fascinating about this entire Canadian discourse. In my deep study of the last 3 years, I try to read papers daily. I try to follow as much news as I can, and it's kind of hard because I have to follow two countries so vociferously because it's India and Canada both. It becomes a real pain in the ass, but I manage. I read like 7 or 8 papers every day, half Indian, half Canadian, and you just follow the news, and I find something very interesting. Like I keep asking people like, what is a Canadian? And honestly, see my so just so that my background is philosophy. I'm a philosopher. I care deeply about these issues, about the like an Indian can give you an answer what is India. They will give you a very robust answer. A Russian can tell you what is Russia. uh you know People who are confused are Pakistanis, because again, they were Indians, then they became whatever they are today. I just think Canada suffers from the Pakistan syndrome, as my friend Darshan Maharaj has. I think they're just confused. They think they're American, but they are not American. They think they're British, but they're not British. And I just think it's a confusion. And I don't say this in an offensive way. I said say this as a person who's analyzing a society himself and who cares deeply for it. Like I would not live in America, very clearly. I have family in America. I could have migrated to America. I would have qualified for any American immigration system, but I chose not to. I was not even coming to Canada. It's only because of a personal tragedy that I had to come here. But otherwise, I was living very happily in India. But the point being is, this is how can this country be taken seriously when you have a member of the parliament tweeting daily, "We're going to win"? Like this is a politician. This is a politician. Like what the hell is happening? Every morning she gets up and she just says, "We're going to win." Like what is this? How do you expect me to take someone seriously?
This is that's what I was alluding at the beginning of our talks. The Canadian identity is, the national aspect of it is an issue, but the other aspect of it is those kind of statements, and just to you look at the average discussion at the House of Commons, the back and forth question period, which is not an answer period, it's a question period because most answers are just a bunch of smoke. It's just the most useless things that's going back and forth. That's completely a waste of time. The Canadian Parliament was shot, when Trudeau resigned, essentially. When Freeland resigned, Trudeau resigned, was going to call election, all this stuff. The Canadian Parliament was shot for months. Oh my gosh, things were just better. There was nobody wasting time with the House of Commons. There's no stupid bills being passed. We still ran a deficit, but it was smaller than when the government was open. And it's, we're just at this point where it's essentially a monkey can run this country. And we should just let the monkey run this country and just fire everyone else. And it would have been cheaper. It would have been better for Canada if the government was still closed. Which is an incredible thing to say, because essentially our politicians should be working to improve the country. The problem is we have no, like I said before, no expectation. Like you said, we're going to win. You're going to win what? What are you going to win? You lost 4 elections in a row. What, you couldn't even run people without kicking other people out for to pander to votes. What are you going to win? It's the most. But it's very easy to grab a Canadian left or right, because you just have to sell them a bunch of pipe dreams, and it's all bullshit. And then, I think the conservative platform they ran was completely embarrassing, one of the worst platforms I've ever seen, especially coming into an election after 10 years of Liberals. You had so much to talk about, so much things to lead on, and you're going to win what? Because you're rage tweeting about temporary foreign workers but won't talk about 90% of the other foreign workers? Like, it just, but that's all it takes, right? Canadians don't want details, do not expect details, do not expect leadership. Even this, I don't know how many people are following this ostrich situation, but people are getting mad at Pierre because he hasn't said anything about the ostrich situation, or nobody essentially did from the Conservative Party, except some backbencher today. And it's like, why wouldn't you show leadership? Like, why wouldn't you? It doesn't matter if you care for the ostrich situation or not. It's a big issue in Canada for a lot of people. Why wouldn't you have a stance on something? Why would you get to a point that your own party, your own voters are so mad at you that you're essentially alienating so many votes, instead of just saying, listen, I'm against government overreach. This is ludicrous. We don't support this, or we support it, or we don't really care. We'll let the system handle it. But at least say what you stand for. Be proactive about things. Throwing things like this, we're going to win when we're like 4 years away from an election, is is just a bunch of nonsense that the Canadians are okay with in the Canadian politics, which they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be tolerating any of this. They should be demanding actual policy stances, actual results, actual things to be done in government, leading industries, leading tech, leading social issues. None of it is really happening. I work a lot with tech, and I couldn't. The amount of people I can tell you that I talked to from government, including MPs and politicians, that said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do this for tech. We're gonna do this for tech. We're gonna try to pass this, or let's work on this in the background so we'll have something to show for it," and have done nothing about it. I would say it's close to 100%. Like, literally, most of them don't do anything with anything that should be leading or should be out of the box, which is highly unfortunate.
So let's talk about the economy a bit. You shared this. Basically, effectively, Canada has no real GDP growth in the last 6 years. What do you think are the primary reasons for this?
Well, one of the issues is the GDP per capita is calculated per population, right? So this is updated to today's numbers, which is when population stats were updated. So our population has been outgrowing our economy. And one of the reasons is, one, our economy has really changed. And we went from an industrial-ish, resource economy-ish over the last 20, 30 years to essentially being a Ponzi scheme economy based on, let's try to flip as much real estate as we can and build as much real estate as we can to flip it to the foreigners that are coming in, right? So we open mass immigration floods, people need houses, supply and demand. So our real estate has became a huge aspect of our economy. The other aspect of it, we became a very unproductive economy. Our productivity has been dropping for a long time. Our manufacturing industry has been essentially on the decline for, I think, 8 or 9 quarters in a row now, which is huge. So we produce nothing except essentially a bunch of plywood and a window to flip to the other guy for some made-up credit, right? That hopefully someone else can flip to someone else. So that is not an economy. That's just a hot air balloon, hoping that there'll be more hot air pumped into it. So this is the situation we're in right now. The unfortunate policies that the last 10 years we had is anti-development policy. Canada is a CapEx country. So we need capital, a lot of capital invested to develop big project, from LNG, from oil pipeline and all this. So those industries have a long time horizon. So when that money requires really good policies. We can't have bad policies for money that is looking at 10 to 20 to 40-year horizons. They need confidence in where they're investing, which unfortunately Canada doesn't have that. The other aspect of it, we don't really have a well-developed tech system. They try to increase capital gain taxes, which will penalize essentially entrepreneurship, and other aspects of it. We don't have a lot of emerging industry because 25% of our workforce works for the government now. So we're losing. So if you think about it, just the basic inefficiencies, 25% of our workforce works for the government. So we leaves with 75. Then about another 20 to 30% works in low productivity aspects such as tourism, retail, all that stuff. So about 55 to 60% of our just the base level of our economy doesn't produce anything. Doesn't have new production capabilities. So now we're left with a few percentiles. If you take out the service industries and all that stuff, you're left with essentially 10 to 15% of our economy, of our employment that can actually has the opportunity to produce something or work in productivity, building industries, which is extremely low, right? Our R&D investment is one of the lowest out of the 20 leading economies. Our schools don't produce. Our schools produce good, some good AI and some good, I would say, research, but it's so low, and we don't commercialize it. Right? Even one of our leading quantum computing companies have moved to the U.S. a couple of years ago. So we have huge brain drain. Even Mark Carney admits that we essentially lose most of our talent in the United States. So this is a big ship to turn around, and if Canada wants to succeed in the future, we need to develop economies that will be important in the future, and we don't do that.
Yeah, but like, why would Canada not want to be into cutting edge technology and fall for easy Ponzi schemes? Like, don't you think being a neighbor to America, I'll give you an example. America gets the best talent of the world. Like, why do you think, like, for example, let's look at the Indian community. They're not even 1.5% of America's population. They pay 6% of America's income tax. 6% of America's income tax is just paid by people of Indian origin. That's how much they are by a country mile the richest ethnic group of Canada. Why? Because also of America. America took the best of the lot over there. You just have to go outside the Indian Institute of Technology and some American companies just sitting there telling like they just pick up the best. It's changing now. They don't leave India anymore. Most of them stay back in India because the pay grade in India is so good. So they don't tend to leave India. There are certain regions of India they go, like down south. There's a particular area they'll go from there. But the point is, Canada could have done that too, right? It's not rocket science, right?
Well, talk about rocket science. It's Canada is one of the only nations that doesn't launch its own rockets, but a lot of our talent launches U.S. rockets and SpaceX rockets, right? But red tape prevented us from launching our own stuff, but so our talent goes where it can. I actually used to have teams in India, and that and I'll probably have again. The issue in Canada is almost the geographic, but also a cultural one. Canada really has 5-6 productive cities you would want to live in. Like if you're looking for a city, right? If we essentially have Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal, Toronto. Throw another couple in there that you would want to live in. That has some kind of substantial, diversity in their economy and a potential to do something. That is very little, right? We're the second largest country on earth, and we have very little choices of where you can be economically productive. So we don't have a lot of support for entrepreneurship and all this emerging tech for in 99.9% of our geography. You look at US, you got the Valley, LA now is becoming really big, Boston, New York, Miami, all those places, Denver. You Austin, you can name 30, 40 cities where there is a bustling entrepreneurship economy, and a lot of them are focused on different things. Like SpaceX is out of Brownsville in Texas, which is a tiny little town, but you have a mega future industry that's booming there, and it's the town is the size of just half of Calgary, not even. I go there every year, and it's so we don't, but we also don't have the culture. One of the interesting things is, I've actually posted a graph on this recently, how much startup seeds activity there's into US compared to other G7 countries. I think I posted Canada, France, and Germany, and the US has more than all of those countries combined. So the US has a natural entrepreneurship drive, and that's part of I think the culture. If you think about how America got created, it came from a rebel culture. It came from a society that just wanted to do things and build things, and it had very aggressive industrial revolutions. The building cars and everything else that was done there first and nowhere else, and explore a new frontier. So it's a very ambitious, still young country compared to other places. Canada doesn't really have that, and most of the money that's been made here has been made out of oil and gas or resources, and that changes a lot of things. Into US, if an entrepreneur makes $10 million, $5 million, sells a company, he'll probably take 500,000 or 200,000, $1 million, and invest into another entrepreneur, into future startups. This doesn't happen here. So what happens here, a lot of people that made money in resources or from resources still are, they don't really reinvest that money in tech companies. And that is one of the biggest issues. So until we see the rise of some tech company exits and them reinvesting into the next generation, so until that ball gets rolling, we're not going to really see a booming tech industry here. The culture is much different. The average person will not invest into startups, will not invest into younger companies. The average, it's really hard to even reach investors again, and we have some horrible red tape around it. The access to money is extremely low. So that is some of the issues here. Indian culture is different. They acquisitive. They like to test things, tinker in things, but also the population of India is huge. So, you guys will produce more engineers and anything else than Canada will produce in the next 10, 20 years. So by osmosis, you have competition, you have innovation, and India is an emerging economy. That's one of the reasons I've been calling Canada is to create a good relationship with India. It's because we have so much synergy and opportunities to work with. And India is essentially where China was 20, 30 years ago, just I think in a better position culturally, government-wise, and all that stuff. So there's so much synergy we have that we can, create a strong partnership. We just need to stop destroying the partnership to appease the Kalistanis. And I think Mark Carney will take a stab at it, and I think they will try to develop a good some kind of relationship or open relationship now. And I think that's what needs to be happening. And I think there's a lot of opportunity from working together.
Darshan Maharaja had posted this on Twitter of what a mess Canada is. You have all these phony freaking asylum applications, and guess what is the average time in Canada? If you're an entrepreneur and want to immigrate to Canada with a startup visa, the processing time is 420 months. What do you mean 35 years? Who the hell is going to wait for these morons?
Yeah.
Like, are these guys retarded? Like, seriously, I'm sorry that you have to call this retarded. Retarded people
It's
do stuff
insane.
like this.
Yeah. Hey, but if you're in asylum, you can just walk over at the border with your suitcase, and
And
RCMP
then
will
start
carry
up.
it for you and start it, and then start up. Yeah, yeah. If you're coming in with $1 million or $5 million, wait 35 years. We'll get to you. If you come here with a suitcase over the border illegally, come on in. We'll give you a free hotel.
But let's now focus on the economic bit, especially. And no, you and I know you have been very consistent about this. Now there is some good movement happening as far as India and Canada is concerned, at least under Carney. This is the one glimmer of hope. I don't know what Carney's obsession with Palestine is, so I'm not going to get into that. I just don't understand it. I don't understand the politics behind it, but it is what it is. But at least on the Kalistani bit, I think PM Carney is a realist. He understands economic realities. Like, do you think the average Canadian realizes that with so much Indian hatred, do you think the average Canadian knows that India is the top 10 trading partner of Canada? Do you think they know that?
Well, I'll answer a couple of things because I think there's an interesting comment there about Carney and why I think there'll be changes with India. One, I think, is the economical aspect of it. I think it's such low-hanging fruit, and the opportunities are huge. The other aspect of it is from the Kalistani aspect of it. I don't think he hasn't lived in Canada for years, so he doesn't know what's going on here, right? So he walks in, right? Like, he essentially came to Canada, lived in a rented house to win an election, and then moved to his riding, kind of thing, before he moved to the official residence. So he doesn't know what's going on in Canada. So he doesn't know who the Kalistanis are in general before, right? But he sees this Kalistani issue, and then he sees, well, as much as we have some trading partnership with India, it's tiny. It should be way bigger, right? And overall diplomatic issue is completely, the bridges were completely burned under the Trudeau government. So he looks at these issues and is like, well, there's one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Donald Trump hurt my feelings. I have to go to someone. And it's like, why would I not go to India just to appease some Kalistanis? And remember, he didn't even put anyone with too many, I don't think even anyone with any Kalistani background in his immediate circle in the government, where
No one's serious.
no one's serious. No, but Pierre can't shake them off, right? he can't take 2 steps without a Kalistani holding his hand and telling him where to go, right? So it's a big difference. It's a huge difference, and I hope Canadians understand this, because that's a huge turn of events here from a political thing, and I think that is the huge strength of the Carney government, that a huge card under their sleeve, because all of a sudden the Canadian intelligence has started raising alarm about Kalistani extremism after the election, and about the ties to Pakistan and the Pakistan operations after the election. And the only party that's essentially associated with them now that Jagmeet Singh is gone is the Conservative Party. So if the Mark Carney will start going after them and start clamping down on this little enclave, what are the Conservatives going to do? So, no, protect our Kalistanis? Like, it's a lose-lose for them, right? There's nowhere the Conservatives can pivot now. So Mark Carney and the Liberals have a huge sleeve under their sleeve, which essentially is a two-faced card, because one, it develops strong partnership with Canada and could even result to start deporting some criminals out of Canada, just like the US did with Modi. And two, is essentially a checkmate on the Conservatives on the political side. And I don't think the Conservatives realize it, because if they start going about it and start raising alarm on it, what are the Conservatives going to do? Right?
I don't think the Conservatives realize that if Mark Carney fixes the Khalistan issue and does trade with India, He has the Indo-Canadian word for the longest time, and the Liberals are not going to lose. Look, I think people don't realize the road to Ottawa is from GTA. Like
Hmm.
it or not, the road to
Yeah, yeah.
Ottawa is from GTA. Guess where a major chunk of Indians live in Canada? GTA. They
Hmm.
control 18 ridings where they are a significant vote.
Hmm.
If Carney fixes Khalistan, increases trade with India, he's winning one more term, in my opinion. It's
Yeah.
it's a done deal.
I personally don't see the Conservatives winning ever again in Canada unless they really change
Really?
the way
Ever?
ever. No, it's
Wow.
if you look at the demographic changes, if you look at the um, trends in votes in general, the, that was the most winnable election the Conservatives have ever had, and they completely fumbled it.
Uh,
So
do
I
you know who
don't.
voted the most for the Conservatives? It was Indians who voted most
Yeah,
for him.
yeah. It's it was such an astonishing strategic loss, but it's yeah, I don't see them winning, and I actually see if Carney gets rid of this or starts addressing this Kalistani thing, but also if he just normalizes some things. Remember, he's only 6 months in, and the unfortunate part is going back to this carbon tax, that. But if he just normalizes the economy a little bit, brings affordable housing down, housing affordability down, because they'll kick out some immigrants out, but they're also creating a lot of immigrants as new citizens that vote for the Liberals. So he has essentially really three or four really strategic pathways that corners the Conservatives into victory, liberal victory for years. Like so, unless the Conservative drastically change a lot of things, I really don't see them winning.
Yeah. Oh, FYI, Anita Anand is visiting India
Yeah.
next month. She's visiting India. We had the National Security Chief of Canada. Again, regular listeners of the Cārvāka podcast will vouch for this. I was the first one who broke the story 4 months ago when Carney became the PM. I was like, intelligence sharing has started again between India and Canada, and everybody was mocking me. I was like, trust me when I say my sources are not wrong. Intelligence sharing has started between India and Canada, and suddenly it doesn't happen that sudden arrests start happening in Canada. It doesn't happen in thin
Mhm.
air. These things are
Mhm.
there is intelligence sharing being done behind the scenes. All India ever expected from Canada was, listen, why do you want to break my country? That's literally the Indian expectation. It was not that bad. It's like let's trade. Canada has natural gas. India needs natural gas. Canada has boatloads of oil. India needs oil. Canada has critical minerals. India needs critical minerals. Canada has certain agricultural products, Kirk, that India cannot produce due to its climate.
Mhm.
We can trade on all these things. India has
Agree. Yeah.
highly skilled people. Listen, eventually the Canadian population is going to have a shortage of skilled tradesmen. We all know that. You and me, people like you and I, who actually look at numbers, we know that the boomers are eventually going to retire, and there's going to be a giant hole in the job market. Like finding a plumber, finding an electrician, a welder. These things are going to be harder and harder over the years.
Mhm.
AI can do many things. It can't fix your fridge. It can't fix your fridge. It can't do a lot of things in your house. And
Yeah.
there were places where we could have done a great team. India could have, like, the worst case scenario, India grows at 7% at this stage. Now with the GST cuts, I don't know if you followed, the GST rates have been slashed in India. There is major reforms happening in India. This economy is growing like crazy. And why would Canada not want to benefit from it? Like, India should be the top five trading partner. Forget the number 8 or 9 trading partner. It should be the top five trading partner. Canada has to hedge away from America, because what if America has a recession someday? Like, what, Canada collapses as a byproduct of that? Is this the plan of Canada, or is every Canadian basically waiting here for America to actually invade them and let's just formally become America? I don't
Yeah.
understand the grand plan. Like, we should be having a normal relation with India. India should be having, like, and ask. any Indian leader that you meet, any, if you ever get to meet them, and they'll say, we just have two expectations from Canada: deal with the Khalistan issue and let's trade. They don't even have a third issue. That's it. Two
Yeah.
issues. And imagine we've messed that.
Yeah, it's. I mean, Canada is becoming. We're harboring every single essentially terrorist organization in the world, right? The IRGC has been operating here for 20 years freely. Just recently, they've been designated as a terrorist group in Canada. Nobody even got kicked out, or no bank accounts were even closed, right? You have other Islamic terrorist group operating here, to cartels, which are even now designated, some of them in Canada, as a terrorist group, a terrorist organization. Nobody's even going after them, right? So everyone operates freely in Canada, which is why the Kalistanis are here, right? Because they can establish even a fake embassy, create a little, put a building and say, listen, this is Kalistan here. And Canada's like, well, okay, I guess. It's, that's the issue is we shouldn't be harboring anyone's terrorists, anyone's criminals. We should be throwing everyone out of here. We're protected by oceans, for goodness sake. Let's use them, right? But the trading aspect of it is extremely important, and not just in. The problem there is we're underdeveloped, right? We don't have really a way to send out oil or LNG effectively to India. We need that investment, which is slowly kind of happening, or supposed to be happening after 10 years of things not happening. But we also produce a ton of different plastics and different things, and uranium and nuclear aspect that should be in cooperation with India. Also, from a tech point of view, there's a lot of Indian companies that would love to open office in North America, right, to access the North American markets. We should be an easy place for them to land and to do that and expand to it. It's absolutely insane that it's not happening, and and those conversations are not even happening at all. It's absolutely astonishing.
It's crazy. It's almost as if Canada has a death wish. I don't know. What else am I supposed to say? I don't understand any of it, because if you're a good Canadian, and if people don't understand, like I often say this, that people who come from countries like India and other countries, like they are economic migrants. They are not oppressed. They are here, and there is no harm in being an economic migrant. You are here to do a job, add value to a society, not break rules. If you break rules, you should be deported back to India. Simple. It should be a universal rule for anybody. All right, that's not a problem. But like, what are we doing here? I just don't understand this. I hope that this current government works around some of these issues. It's really disappointing. But before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to talk about that you think we missed out, or something in particular?
No, I think we had a good conversation about a lot of topics. I think the interesting aspect of it is, the Sikh community in Canada is the largest in the world, the fastest growing in the world. So the Canadian population is actually moving towards being more Indian than anyone else, if you look at the demographics. So there'll be a lot of interesting changes in Canada's future here. The issue is really is for Canada, not even has to do anything with India. The issue is for Canada, and you brought up the US, is really how do we change things around to be in a productive economy? There's like literally nothing stopping Canada from being a low tax jurisdiction and a really rich, affluent country. Nothing, except really will to do with the hard work, the will to do things outside of the box, think differently, act differently, and be bold with ideas. And we need to see the kind of leadership. And maybe it'll be some MP from India that will drive that one day, that message. Maybe it'll be someone else. I don't know, but it's the question is, when will people get sick and tired of not having the full opportunity that's given to Canada? And I think that's what we should be aiming for.
Yeah, I think in the long story of this is that, like, I often tell people don't realize how much of Indian hate is actually driven by Pakistani and Bangladeshi bots on the internet. It's like, again, I'm an investigative commentator. I investigate issues. That's my job. That's like I do deep dives into a subject. 3 years I've been studying the Pakistani and Bangladeshi bots, and same they prop up Khalistan and on all of that. And unfortunately, people don't realize that all this Indian hatred is not getting them anywhere, is because even if after all of this it doesn't change the story of India. And people don't need to worry. If you want Indians to go back, they're not going to be coming to any place after 10 years anyway. They're just going
Yeah.
to stay in India.
That is actually a very interesting, probably even a longer conversation, quite philosophical. That aspect of the bots and social media, you look at all the Islamic propaganda that's on social media, that is driven by Pakistani bots as well, Qatari bots, right? All the same people that are posting anti-India stuff, anti-Jew stuff, anti-whatever stuff. A lot of the patriot accounts from the US are fake accounts from overseas. And I think that is one of the issues that's really changing, I think, the Western culture, because it builds narratives, right? People follow different accounts that think they're legit, and sensationalize things, or create different funny memes or whatever, but they become normalizing things that eventually becomes reality for too many people. And I think that foreign influence that we in North America call stupidly free speech will change the Western world forever.
Yeah, let's see. I don't know what the future is. All I know is that eventually you cannot be taken seriously as a country if you have policies like Canada does. You cannot have Indians claiming asylum status in Canada. It's just
Yeah,
hilarious. Do you know? I heard something. Do you know they used to give Christmas gifts to, like, asylum seekers, and there are many occasions where the asylum seekers had gone back to their home country so they could take the Christmas gift. This is so stupid. It is so stupid.
It
The gift
is,
is
yeah.
amazing.
It's before, so India right now is one of the countries that leading asylum claims. Before that, it was Mexico.
Yeah.
So we would bring in Mexican workers, and the reason Canada has a visa requirements for Mexico is because that was the number one leading asylum claimant people were coming from. They'll come here and come here in a work visa or whatever. They'll claim asylum almost right away, and that was one of our biggest leading numbers. And the visa was put in under Harper. Then Justin Trudeau took it off for like a year, which was a massive mistake. And the U.S. essentially made him put it back because there was so much human trafficking to the U.S. as well. And now Carney had another visit in Mexico, and they tried to ask him to remove the visa requirements. So all those things are so obvious, right? It's like, why isn't it even there just a simple computer app that says where you're applying for asylum from, what's your country? India, Mexico, whatever, US, denied, move on. That's it. Like, why is there even a 20-year process to go through asylum claimants from India? It makes no sense, right? It makes zero sense. There'll be literally career bureaucrats. They'll be working or retiring with a generous pension who work just on Indian asylum claim files. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. We're wasting so much time and energy on things that should be automatic no or automatic yes. It's like, let's just get with the program, right? And this is the story of Canada, right? The simplest things here take forever, and the simplest things is such a waste of money here. It's like, let's just do things. Like, we don't have to take years to do the simplest things.
Yeah. listen, man, I don't know. All we can do is we can keep talking about these issues and hopefully raise awareness about these issues all the time. But you do fantastic work, and I
Thank you.
and I sincerely mean this. You're a you're a prolific writer. I like your Substack too, by the way.
Oh,
I like
thank
your
you.
Substack. I like your Substack, and I highly recommend people, if you go read it, you'll actually learn a lot. Um, and keep doing what you're doing, man. All the best.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right, guys, we'll wrap it up. So all the details for Kirk's X handle, and I think his website has all his social media details there. I've added it in the description of the podcast. So whether you're listening to the audio version or you're going to watch this on YouTube, you can go check out Kirk's work. I highly recommend it. He's doing fantastic work. It's really worth reading and exploring it. And as far as I'm concerned, you know the drill. The Cārvāka podcast is a members only run podcast. We don't do ad reads. We don't promote any company on this podcast. So if you can, do support the Cārvāka podcast. Do send your donations if you're in Canada through Interac Canada. The email ID is kushalmehra81@gmail.com. In India, the UPI ID is kushalmehra@ICICI. You can join the membership on YouTube or on Patreon. If you can't do that, just like this video, subscribe to the Cārvāka podcast YouTube channel, and leave a rating on your preferred audio platform. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, stay, take care.